Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Business First Creatives podcast. Today's guest is special. I have Courtney Porter, and we are going to be talking about burnout as entrepreneurs. So, Courtney, good morning, and how are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well this morning, and I hope you are too.
Hmm. Let me tell you guys a little bit about how I know Courtney. I know Courtney because her husband, Marcus, is a photographer, and I met both of them for the first time at the photo cookout. Let's see, that was New Orleans, 2019. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I know I've known you for a few years now, Courtney. Isn't that crazy?
I know it is.
But Courtney, why don't you tell us what you do and who you serve? Because, guys, spoiler alert, Courtney is not a photographer. That is not how she makes her money. So tell us all about yourself, Courtney.
Well, I am a licensed clinical social worker, but my profession is I'm a mental health therapist, and I do two things. I work full time in an outpatient mental health clinic, working with, in a rural population. But in my private practice, I work with entrepreneurs and helping them focus on self care to reduce burnout in their relationships and in their work.
Okay, Courtney. So, first, why don't you paint a picture for me? What does burnout look like for most entrepreneurs that you work with?
Mm. Burnout looks like exhaustion, like you tend to be physically exhausted. You tend to sometimes feel like, am I failing at what I'm doing? Because nothing that I'm doing seems to be working. What's wrong? You tend to question who you are, what your purpose is. You're not as passionate as you were when you started. When you
Hmm.
first start something, you're just like gung ho, ready to move. But then that energy starts to fade and you don't know why. You don't know where it's coming from. All you know is, I'm tired. I just want to sleep. I'm just tired. I just want to rest. And I don't know where it's coming from. In many instances, people struggle with sleep. Maybe for some people, you have a lot on your mind and you don't know how to put it into play. So it's hard to fall asleep.
Hmm.
But then when you sleep, it's hard to get up to find the energy to wake up. So you have so much on your mind because with entrepreneurs, the ideas just keep streaming in and streaming in because the dreams are so big, but the execution just seems like, oh my God, I can't put it in my grasp. I can't put it in my hands.
Hmm.
And so you just really want to accomplish those dreams. So that's just a snippet of what burnout can look like for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, one of the things, you mentioned many things that we are going to hit on, but the one thing that I think I want to start with is when you mentioned a lack of creativity. Because recently I have been struggling with this, and I don't necessarily think that I'm suffering from burnout per se from my business, but I definitely do see a lack of creativity in myself when it comes to the photography side of my business because I have been going forward so hard in like the
Hmm.
system side of my business. Like for myself, I feel avoidance, which is not a word that you used. But now that I mention it, I'm sure that you would agree. I find
Hmm.
myself looking for other things to do other than what I
Yeah.
need to be doing to like run my photography business. Like, I need to sit down. I need to either edit a session or send it to my editor. I need to create a film or set it to my film editor. And sometimes I feel overwhelmed and
Yeah.
not very creative to where I can't even do the next step that I need to do in order to deliver, my sessions to my clients. So even though you said like lack of time, I feel tired all the time. But for myself, I think that it's really manifested in like an avoidance of doing the things that I know need to be done. And if I would just sit down and do them, like I could
Hmm.
do the next step, but like the overwhelming fear of sitting down to do that first step, like I'm not setting the time. I'm not doing those kinds of things. So, one of the things that I know that you wanted to talk about today is like priorities. So, let's say that I'm an entrepreneur and I've identified I am feeling tired, I am avoiding doing things. What How can my priorities be adjusted in order to bring myself out of the burnout phase?
I think one part that some people struggle with, all of us in whatever profession, is identifying the problem. And I think which we run from, because when we identify a problem, we feel that something is wrong with us. We tend to personalize that and we feel guilt and we attach shame to, oh my God, if something's wrong, then that means that I'm wrong. And what you are describing is really anxiety, because anxiety, the root of anxiety is feeling like I have all of this to do, but all of this has to be done at the same time. But that's really unrealistic, because nothing can ever be done all at the same time. We can only do things one task at a time. And that's how people become overwhelmed, because it's like, oh my God, I have to take the kids to school. I need to edit these photos. I need to send these edits off. But can I honestly do those things at the same time? No. Prioritizing what's more important to get done at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, really understanding what's more important at this time and scheduling things out as such. And that really reduces the overwhelm that comes with it. Because another thing to keep in mind is that as entrepreneurs, a lot is on your shoulders anyway. And so you feel like you have to do a lot by yourself. So, really finding a way to also delegate tasks,
Mm-hmm.
if that's possible, to reduce the stress and the overwhelming pressure and stress that comes with being a business owner. Now, I think it's important for entrepreneurs to know every task that's needed for their business to run, but I don't think it's vital that they do all of those
Ooh,
tasks
girl.
themselves,
Courtney, you
because
just said a
that
word.
that will really lead you to a quick burnout, because our body will let us know. Our mind may be running, but our body will let us know, sis, girl, sit down somewhere, or I'm going to sit down for you.
Mm-hmm.
And we wonder why we don't have the energy. If you have kids and a family, the kids want to play, they want to talk to you, they want to do things, but you're just not emotionally available. You're physically tired. You just don't have the energy. And so you're mentally, you want to be there, but physically it's not adding up. The energy isn't meeting on the same level. So really understanding, even as an entrepreneur, that it's okay to delegate, and it's okay not to do everything on your own, because you're only one person.
I mean, guys, you know, she said, I mean, she didn't say outsource. She said delegate, but you guys know that's like my second favorite word. I have found myself delegating a lot. And one of the things that I've learned, that I like to say this in every opportunity that I can on my podcast, is that sometimes it takes more time to delegate than it does for you to do it yourself. But that doesn't mean that there's not value in delegating it to
Mhm.
someone else. So, like, I bring up an example of, you know, I needed to get something done, and instead of doing it myself, which probably would have taken like 10 minutes, it took me 15 minutes to outline it for my virtual assistant, to prioritize the tasks, to tell her exactly how to do each one. But that was 15 minutes this time. Now I have
Exactly.
that SOP, so that the next time that it needs to be done, I don't need to re-explain it to her again. She already has the steps from the first time. So the very first time that you delegate something to either someone in your business or a professional that you've hired, it may take you more time, but in the long run, it will save you more time. So, Courtney, let's get back to
Exactly.
this prioritizing. How do you think that people should prioritize the tasks in their business? And how do people that you work with like split the difference between prioritizing the tasks in their business and then prioritizing the tasks in their personal life? Because, of course, we each only get the 24 hours a day, no matter if you just have a family or if you have a family and business or whatever is going on in your life. Like, how do you encourage people to set those priorities for themselves and their business?
The key word that I use with my clients is boundaries. It's the B word,
Mm-hmm.
boundaries. And boundaries are so important because they're the limits and restrictions that we put in place, because it really teaches, it shows us how we want to be treated. And it's also teaching other people how we expect them to treat us, and setting realistic expectations for ourselves and for others when it comes to executing business responsibilities. And realizing that if I have to have my hand and everything in my business, then I'm not the owner. I'm just an employee. I'm just another employee. I don't, it's important, like I said at the beginning, it's important to know how to do and run every facet of your business. But it's not necessary in the long run to have your hand in everything because there's only so many fingers, on your hand, and we only have two hands, and you can only do so much. So you have to be realistic with yourself and reduce the pressure. And with that comes really having realistic expectations on yourself in regards to prioritizing, because like you said a few minutes ago, initially when you outsource, the longest time it takes is the beginning, but in the end you really get that time back
Mm-hmm.
because now you don't have to put or find ways to include that time on your schedule because you've outsourced to an editor, or you've outsourced to a person to culture your images, or you've outsourced, or you've even added an additional photographer to help. Let's just say you do weddings and you don't have to try to run all over the place, all over the building to be with the bride and with the groom at the same time, but you're able to ask for help. And I really do believe that's important for entrepreneurs to really be okay with knowing that you can ask for help and people will be there for you. A lot of times, people are willing to help us, but because we don't open our mouths to ask for it, then they're not going to say, "Sure, I can do this for you. I got you."
Mm-hmm.
But if we won't, closed mouths don't get fed,
I mean, that was
you
on
know.
the tip of my tongue, Courtney. Like literally, it was sitting there. Okay, Courtney. So I have a question now. Do you think that there is like one boundary that most entrepreneurs struggle to set for themselves? And if so, what is it?
I believe it's the boundary with time. And I would say that because a lot of times you don't realize as an entrepreneur when people are wasting your time
Mhm.
or they're taking up your time when they don't need to. So time boundary is important when it comes to entrepreneurs and not allowing people to take up time that you could be investing in doing something else in. So time is what I also see is what one thing that I see. And emotional boundaries is another thing because your emotions are attached to your business because that's your baby,
Mhm.
right? And you want it, you're trying to groom it and you're trying to shape it and you want it to look a certain way. And there are certain people you don't want to be around your baby because they're going to taint it, they're going to distort it, they're going to try to recreate it or change the values that you have in place for it. So really having limits in place on how you allow people to affect you emotionally and become too opinionated, projecting their opinions on your business
Mhm.
and changing your idea and view of autom- how you initially thought your business to be, but then they come in and try to change and reshape it into what they think it should be. So
Yeah.
emotional boundaries and time boundaries tend to come up.
I mean, I see a couple things mixed into what you just said. So that time boundary is so important because one of the things that I think that we overlook is like rescheduling. I think that we
Hmm.
all acknowledge because when people ask me what my rescheduling policy is for my, my photography sessions, I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh no. Like if a kid is sick, I reschedule. If a mom and dad have had a fight the night before, I allow them to reschedule." But that is something that I have placed on myself as I want to make sure that when I come into their space, because I am not one of those photographers that takes you outside and photographs you for 30 minutes and we're done. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
inside your house, I'm inside that space for 2 to 3 hours at a time. And so, if people didn't get enough sleep, if someone's not feeling well, if there's tension in the house because you and your partner got in an argument the next night, like those don't help me produce the best images that I can for you. So while
Correct.
I don't advertise that like I have an
Hmm.
unlimited reschedule policy because that would just be ridiculous. I mean, I
Hmm.
do tell my clients when I'm checking in with them, "Hey, is everything good? Are we good for tomorrow?" Because the worst thing that you can do is show up and waste 3 hours of my time, and at the end
Yeah.
of the session I'm like, I don't think I really captured them. I didn't get what I need, and then we're going to have to
Hmm.
redo the session again.
Right.
Now, how do I get clients to respect my boundaries? I mean, I have things in there that talk about a rescheduling fee, how many
Hmm.
times you get to reschedule with me before I charge you, before you lose your deposit. I mean, and those are boundaries that I am clearly communicating in the booking process, in my contract, in the emails that I send. And so, how do you encourage people to communicate those boundaries to their clients? Because I also feel like some people struggle, clearly not me, Courtney, but some people struggle with communicating those things to their client because they're worried of the pushback that they would get from the clients. And
Right.
it's like they have this policy, and when someone questions them, their gut reaction is, oh, well, I should do what the client told me, right? So how do you
Hmm.
talk to people about, getting that confidence in communicating the boundaries to their clients?
I think it's important to separate. As entrepreneurs, I know the clients are your customers and the clients are your income. And so your clients tell you how to run your business. But when you get to the point to where you are relying so much on your clients that you're dismissing your needs and your realistic abilities of what you can and can't do, then it still defeats the whole purpose. One thing that I do encourage people is, and that I've learned along the way, even with Marcus and the photography business, do not overcommit, because when you overcommit and you underdeliver, that's just as bad as anything else, because you can't say, okay, I can do this, we can do this, and we can do this, and then it doesn't end up happening. It's best to undercommit and overdeliver rather than to overcommit and underdeliver,
Mm-hmm.
because you can say, you in your contract you can say you'll only get 50 images, and there's a certain expectation that your client is expecting just based off the contract. But when you deliver 100, they're just like, oh my gosh, even though but it's best to pull a little back initially, and at the beginning, or at the initial meeting with your client, create that expectation and not put so much on yourself to whether you're too exhausted to get the task done. So I would encourage business owners and entrepreneurs to not overcommit, because when you overcommit, you're putting yourself in the position to disappoint your client.
Yeah.
High expectations yield quick disappointments.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
not saying not have any expectations. It's important to have a standard, but don't put them up so high to where they're unrealistic to even you and the client, to where the client says, "Oh my God, you can do all of that." Don't do that. You're doing too much.
mm-hmm. And I think that talking about disappointment ties it back to when you were saying protecting your emotional well-being, because when you have disappointed clients, it's cyclical. Like their disappointment feeds into you, and then you feel, insecure about your business, and that will lead to burnout even quicker. I mean,
Correct.
yeah. Courtney, let's talk about what entrepreneurs can do to avoid burnout from the get go. I know that you advocate for a lot of self care for entrepreneurs. What does that look like?
Self care is knowing when you need to sit down and take a break. The hardest reality and the hardest pill to swallow is to work yourself to death, and I really mean to death, and not even enjoy the fruits of the labor that you put into place. You're working so much that you're too tired to even enjoy your family. You're even too tired to go to Disney, and I know you
Less
will.
of happening.
You're too tired to enjoy the things that you normally do. So when you work so much, but yet you can't enjoy the work that you've done, that takes away, and it takes the enjoyment and the love out of what you're doing. So I really do think it's important to know when it's necessary to take a break. No one can run off of unlimited energy forever.
Mhm.
All of us need a rest, and or if we don't take the time to rest, then our body is going to tell us, okay, well, if you can't sit down, I'm going to sit down for you. So it's rather for it to be voluntary rather than involuntary, because you never know how long involuntary will have you down and out, and then that really puts a dent in your business. because now you may be sick, you may be physically unable to do things, and it creates more complications and problems in the long run. So
Yeah,
taking breaks is one.
I mean, voluntary versus involuntary. I think that a lot of us don't consider what will happen if you don't protect your calendar, if you don't protect your emotional well-being, and you end
Mhm.
up in a position where you are physically unable to do what needs to be done in your business, what happens? I mean, you have reschedules, you have cancellations, and then from
Mhm.
there, it just snowballs. And so, whether or
Exactly.
not you can recover from that snowball is separate from trying to do things to avoid that happening in the first place. So, Courtney, what does self care actually look like? Like, realistically, as entrepreneurs, what should we be doing on either a weekly or a monthly basis to make sure that we are practicing self care?
I think simplifying it, really sticking with the basics and keeping it simple, because a lot of times we can overcomplicate self care. But self care is really, that includes taking a break. That includes how am I treating myself? How am I being healthy? Am I exercising? Am I at least taking a walk, getting
Mm-hmm.
some fresh air? Even if it's just a walk down the block, nothing, you don't have to do body pump, or I can't think of the other strenuous
Mm-hmm.
workout that people do, but you don't have to do anything strenuous. Just a nice walk outside is healing in and of itself. How you eat, your exercise, your sleep. Sleep is so vital and important, because if your mind isn't rested, you won't have the creativity and the creative aptitude to even produce for your clients
Mm-hmm.
and to continue to come out with these great ideas of how to make your business even better and how to create an even better product for your client. Just how you can be better overall for your client, because when you're better, then it's going to create a great experience for your client. Self love, self care, acceptance, they all start with self, and none of those things can be found in anyone else. So we have to begin with ourselves. And if I'm not taking care of myself, then I can't do anything for my client, for my family, or anyone if I don't focus on self first.
I mean, it's funny when people ask me what I do for self care. I say my monthly trips to Disney. Didn't you know?
You're
But what
right.
I have
Like
figured,
you.
I mean, but what I have figured out in like the last few months, and it wasn't like this in the beginning, but what I have come to realize is even though I get a lot of joy from going to Disney, it is a lot of work. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
in the park, I'm taking like 20,000 steps a day. We're usually there at rope drop. It's a time difference. I mean, there's all of these things going on. And so I cannot snap back like I did even a year ago. Because, like a year
Hmm.
ago, I would go to Disney on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I'd have a full day of calls. I would have like a
Yeah.
VIP day setup. I would have a photo session on Friday. And what I have learned is that not only do I need to do what I love, which is going to Disney, I then have to give myself a day of rest so that I can recover, so that I am not doing all of my calls from my bed, which I mean, I can do that. But if I do that too many times, it is going to eventually lead to like a loss of joy for Disney. And who wants that? Like, you have to make sure
Nobody.
that you're not only are you making time for the things that you love, but that you're not overdoing it so that you can continue to enjoy, whatever brings you joy, whatever you practice as self
Yes.
care. And so,
Yes.
I feel like I was guilty because in this week particular, Courtney, I mean, we're recording in April of 2023, just got back from Disney on Wednesday, and I made the mistake of not giving myself yesterday off. And so,
Yeah.
first two calls of the day, I was in the bed with the laptop, apologizing to people like, I'm in the bed today. Take it as you will. I mean, and today I only have two calls. So, I mean, it was a much lighter schedule today,
Hmm.
but I need to get in a better practice of when I'm going to Disney, definitely marking off at least 1 to 2 days after. But so if someone finds themselves in that period of burnout, like it's easy for us to say you should practice self care, you should delegate. But what if it's
Hmm.
actually already gone too far? Like, what if you find yourself with 10 sessions scheduled in the next 2 weeks and you're behind on your edits and you're not getting enough sleep because you're doing too much, like, what's the first step of like breaking the cycle of burnout and making a plan to come out on the other end?
I will go back to knowing when you need help. In some instances, it may be to seek a therapist or to seek counsel because a lot of time everything starts mentally. And once you're tapped out mentally, that rolls over and it dominoes into every other facet of your life. So a lot of times, maybe you just need to get everything off of your mind and talk to a professional to get that release because you don't realize how much you're carrying until you start talking and letting it all out. And you feel so much relief and so free, free afterward as you get release that burden, that mental burden off. So knowing how to ask for help or seek help. Also, even a mentor. Some people call them, I think you said earlier you had a business mentor.
Mhm.
A lot of times we don't have to go through breakdowns ourselves. We can learn lessons from other people's experience to get us back to snap us out of
Mhm.
this whole hustle and grind type of mentality.
Ugh.
Because even the definition of grind, if I'm grinding something, that means I'm breaking it all the way down and I'm bearing it down to the rawness. No one wants to be grinded. I know I
Mm-mm.
don't. So we get caught up into the rigmarole of society's idea of what entrepreneurship is. Not saying that it doesn't require hustle, but social media will have you think, oh, I'm hustling and grinding all of the time. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. That's not every day. You have to know, and that goes with your time management. You have to know I'm designating time to put into gathering information for this and executing how I'm going to get it done. So it's really not about hustle and grind because that's going to lead you also to a quick and soon burnout. So
Yeah.
really knowing when you should take a step back. And I also wanted to go back to what you said about the vacation because that comes up a lot. What you don't realize is you don't realize how tired you are
Yes.
until you go on vacation. The first few days is meant sleeping. You take you're taking like I just need to sleep from everything that I put out into the world and into my clients. So I just need to recoup from that so I can have the energy to do something else, to have fun. And then I need a break, a vacation from the vacation,
Yes.
which is that cushion
Mm-hmm.
the day after you get back from Disney, the 1 or 2 days that you need to make up to rest from the fun. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's totally okay. And we have to reprogram ourselves to believe that I don't have to be running all the time, gunning and running all of the time. I can take a break. And because you have those pieces in place and your business is set up so well to where everything is lined up, nothing will be out of order. Everything will still be able to run smoothly once you get back on your feet, and nothing will break down or fall apart because you've created those pieces and outsources in place to make sure things run smoothly.
Yeah. I mean, and guys, I'm going to put a few episodes in the show notes. If you are looking for things to outsource, ways to delegate, I have many episodes on this podcast where we highlight those things, particularly for photographers. But Courtney, it is one of my wish, and I've been guilty of this, of like talking about the hustle culture, because I feel like in photography in particular, a lot of us have very unrealistic expectations of what it costs us and what it takes to
Hmm.
grow a successful and a sustainable photography business. And while I have always said, I mean, you have to hustle for a while and then once it gets going, you can take time off. I have backed off of saying that because I feel like we are setting the expectation of you have to work in your business 24/7 in order to grow it, which is definitely not the
Right.
case. But I think a lot of people think that if they only put in like 6 hours a week, that you're going to pull this business and, make it a six-figure photography business. I'm doing air quotes for those of you who can't see me. Um, but I mean, that is also unrealistic. So it's like
Right.
finding that middle ground where you are not hustling yourself into burnout, but you're also not thinking that it only takes a few hours a week and you're all of a sudden going to have, clients booked every week and make your financial goals whatever they are.
And you have
Yeah.
to you have to match your actual work ethic to what your dreams are, not what you see other entrepreneurs accomplishing. Because I think we get caught up in other entrepreneurs' glamour or what we see them doing, and we're trying to catch up with them.
Mhm.
But that may not be our dream. I think it's great to have people to look up to, but their wants are not our wants. And it's good to see people succeeding, but their idea of success may not be yours. So you
Yes.
have to know what success looks like for you, because you, in your perspective, based off of what you've built so far, you could have created your success and you could have been there, but because you're focused on the wrong goal and the wrong target, you've checked that box off of what your success looks like, but you're redirected onto the wrong person's success,
Mhm.
to where you're not even focusing and sitting in your own achievements and accomplishments and all that you've gotten done along this journey and along this way. Because there are so many, you're successful, Colie, in all that you've done. But if you're looking at another photographer and them, you may not think that what you're doing is enough.
Mhm.
And so I have to remind entrepreneurs too that you are enough. What you're doing is enough. You're already enough. So comparison is the thief of joy, and we
Yes.
hear that all the time. So when we are so caught up in comparing, then we lose sight of being grateful and having gratitude for where we are, what we have, and where we are right now.
You know what, Courtney? That's an excellent place to end this podcast. I could not have said any of that better myself. If the listening audience want to learn more about you and your offers, where can they find you on the internet?
On Instagram, I'm Courtney L. Porter Therapy. You can find me, and my website is CourtneyLPorter.com.
Awesome. And guys, those will be in the show notes. Courtney, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. This was a real
Thank
joy. I mean,
you.
this is definitely separate and different than my normal guests and what we talk about, but burnout and all of this is in everyone's life and everyone's business, and I just thought that it was super important to hear about these concepts from the other side, like not from the actual entrepreneur, but from the person that we might actually need to seek help from once we
Mm.
get into that place of burnout. So, Courtney, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. This has been a joy. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me, Colie.
And guys, this is it for this episode. See you next time.
Bye.